Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Talking Tradesman. Today, breaking distance travelled records, we have Stuart Mclean from Mclean
Mc,
Painting and Decorating.
McLean.
McLean.
Yeah,
Have I got that wrong straight away?
yeah.
Oh,
Don't be
shit.
offended. Everybody does it. Like, I get messages for Kev, Uncle Brian. They're always like, "Oh, S. McLean." I'm like,
So have it been known from this point on, it is McLean. I've got that right now, Stuart.
yeah, like in Die Hard.
Right. There we go. Reference. It's Stuart Mclean. So today we have Stuart Mclean all the way from north of the border in Edinburgh, taking Will Blackburn's record for longest distance travelled and holding on to it for some time, I would imagine.
I was going to try and break his tash as well, but
Nobody's going to have that
no,
one, mate.
definitely not.
But Stuart, let's talk, mate. Let's talk. First of all, massive thanks to you and your good lady sat in the background over there. Got one slightly off camera. For the effort, mate. So huge thanks. You've made a monumental effort travelling all the way down.
Happy to anticipate.
Yeah, well, it's one of those where I'm hugely grateful to anyone that gives up their time, even if they're travelling from 5 minutes away. But I believe a 600-mile round trip is extraordinary effort. So really appreciate that, mate.
I've only done it for the Child's Free Night.
Oh, don't blame you, mate. Don't blame you. Right then, mate. Obviously, the episode is about yourself, your journey and story in business and life. So we shall go back to the beginning. Tell me a little bit about your sort of like early days. How was childhood and schooling and all that kind of thing?
Really boring, to be honest. It was just a very normal upbringing. Mum and Dad were there. Maybe borderline sheltered. Didn't really like anticipate a lot of clubs or things like that. I always just like stayed indoors, things like that. But like my dad was a painter and decorator, so if I was ever off school or there was holidays, my dad would.
Perfect time, isn't it? It's just going to pull up. So we got sirens going here.
So my dad would take me in the car to like the various sites that he had on the go, and just that was my introduction into the trade.
How did you get on in like school days? I always find this interesting because there's normally a variation for people that come into the trades. How was school for you?
Yeah, I actually did really well in school. I used to excel in school. I was a bit of a swot. I like learning. I think school went really well. I was a bit of a teacher's pet, really.
Did you always intend, like, had you got the trades, if your dad was a decorator, had you got the trades in mind, or was there anything else you thought about doing?
Yeah, it's funny, like, because my mum's still got all my primary school jotters in the attic, and I'm like, you like read through them, and it's like, when I grow up, I either want to be a professional football player or work for my dad, and it's like, oh, really nice, but I think it got drummed out of me that like, oh, you don't want to be a painter and decorator, like you want to do something else, like.
I was at that point. Then I was expecting you to say it got drummed out of you that you're not going to be a football player, but you went for the decorator.
I was terrible at football anyway, so.
Oh, okay.
That was never going to happen. So I was like started looking at other things, and I actually wanted to pursue a career in veterinary services.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So started doing things like biology in school, or into high school, chemistry, or like the sciences to start working towards that, and then towards the end of high school, open days at university, they were like, if you're going to be a vet, you have to be a doctor first, like, in training, because if anything major happens, like a war or something, a vet can become an emergency doctor. And I was like, it's not happening. So the last couple of years of high school, well, I had my grades to go and be a vet. It's like, I'm going to enjoy my last couple of years of school. So I started doing subjects like craft and design, things with the hands, and I was like, I'm actually starting to enjoy it. But my dad also was like, you'll be working. So summer holidays, he had me on site, and I'm thinking how he done it. I must have been 15 and I was working on building sites.
Yeah. Well, I can resonate with that, mate. I had a very similar journey into going to work with my old man when I was particularly young. I think it goes one or two ways, doesn't it? You either kind of get the bug for it or you push opposite directions from it and think, not for me.
Yeah.
But obviously it went the way where you've ended up going into it. So did you how did you? I mean, first of all, how did you find? What was like your first impression? Site work, you
Yeah,
say? Okay.
and it was my first jobs on site was painting fascias and soffits for new build houses down in Peebles. So I was like up on the scaffold. I think that's how he got away with it. I think he told the site manager I was 16 and he just like out of sight, out of mind. Like he's just going to be
Mm.
doing that. Like,
It was a different world back then, though, Stuart, wasn't it? Like
yeah,
compared to today's health and safety, I think, I look back at some of the stuff that I used to do. I imagine we're not too far apart in years. And like the health and safety and the ladder work and stuff like that, it just wasn't even frowned upon. So I would imagine a youngster turning up would have been a lot easier to slide under the carpet
yeah.
than it would be these days.
I remember I nearly had a really bad accident my first day on site. It's this,
Mm.
I was just like walking along the scaffold, and one of the scaffold boards was just leaning. It wasn't attached to underneath anything, so I stood on it, and it just completely collapsed, fell down, and went straight through a kitchen window. And I was like, "Am I going to get crap for
Oh,
that?"
really?
Yeah, I
Let's see,
didn't like it.
so.
It was the scaffold that were going crap for it, not me.
Mm. Yeah, it's personally, I massively prefer working on scaffold at height. But some of the lads that used to work for me hated scaffold. They're more comfortable working off ladders. Again, I don't know whether that was a generational thing.
I just hate outside work anyway. So,
Yeah, well, do you
but
still you do it?
sometimes like certain customers, but
Mm,
like back then you didn't have like what you've got now with the steps up ladders. It was always ladder,
mm.
like full on steep ladders getting you up the scaffold. Now you've got the sort of steps up.
Yeah, I can't remember what guest I was talking to actually, but I was talking to a guest about a local building site by me was the first time I'd clocked that the scaffolding had staircases rather than ladders. It's the first time I'd seen it. Well, I don't know whether that's it like industry standard now.
We've had that for a couple of years. Like, my dad used to spray the outside of houses, and
Mm,
I'd go behind them with a roller. Like, I've tried that with a ladder. It was an absolute nightmare.
I bet it was. Mind you,
Like,
spraying off a ladder's no fun, is it?
no, it's like 4 or 5 trips up and down the ladder trying to get the bucket up, paint up, the roller.
Mm. So, did your dad was he employed or self-employed?
He's self-employed. He owned a painting firm. At one point, it was one of the biggest painting firms in Scotland. He was going to partner up with a Harlan and rough casting company, and that would have made them one of the biggest in the UK. But that fell through,
Mm.
and then my dad's business partner had a falling out, and they went their separate ways. So my dad just ended up being his own firm.
Okay. So, I mean, you had a good pedigree then coming up into it. So, you've gone through school, you've done okay. Did you go straight into working with your dad then, as soon as you left school?
Not by choice. I'd actually wanted to take a year out and like fully decide what I wanted to do, but I used to ride BMX. That was my hobby. Like
Okay.
I used to go to skate parks up and down Scotland, and I'd snapped a set of handlebars, and I think I needed £80 to replace them. And my dad was like, "Absolutely not. If you want £80, you need to work for it." So it's like, fine. And you know, it's like when you start making a bit of money, and I just never really looked back from then.
Caught the bug.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all my friends were working in supermarkets or shops, going to college to do degrees that they'll probably never do anything with.
Mm.
And I was getting fleeced by my dad for like £60 a week or something. So, but it was a lot of money to me back. Like I was only about 17 when I started
Mm.
properly with my dad.
Here's a question for you, mate. I've never really asked anyone actually. If you were to turn back time and you had that opportunity now, knowing what you know now, would you still have gone into the trades?
Yeah, I think so. Made a lot of great friends in the trade, and
Mm.
I don't think I would have had that if I'd went in another direction. A lot of the people I've met, certainly since I started it for myself, away from building sites, are a lot similar to me. So yeah, I think I might have done.
Yeah. The reason I ask is little thought went through my mind while we were talking then, and it was like it seems to be like most tradespeople when I talk to them, it's stumbling into
Mm.
or a coincidence. I ended up in the trades because of. Whereas I don't know, pick another. We'll go to the extremes here, but I want to be a fighter pilot starts off as I want to be a fighter pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lot of tradespeople doesn't seem to start off with, yeah, I always wanted to be a decorator, a carpenter, a bricklayer. It seems to be like I ended up in it because of. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
But I remember all my family were like, well, do your apprenticeship, and then you can just decide what you want to do. Then you've got a trade to fall back on. So again, it goes
Mm.
back to like, oh, if you're a painter and decorator, you're just a failure.
Yeah, it's a mindset thing, isn't it? I mean, again, what you just said there with to fall back on, like, why isn't it, go and do your apprenticeship because that's a really good career. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to stand you in good stead for, the rest of your life. And like you say, you've always got a trade, you've always got a job. So it's that perception, isn't it? The initial perception of you end up in the trades because something bad has happened, essentially, or so because you failed at something else.
Like we've travelled like to see family and that, and they're always surprised that I'm just a painter.
Just a painter.
Yeah, like, oh, you could have done so much more with your life. You're wasted as a painter because you're really intelligent. I'm like, I can be intelligent and be a painter and decorator.
Yeah. Yeah, do you know what, mate? I had this conversation. So my son's 17, and I had this conversation with him, and I've had this on previous episodes where I've gone into it. And he's studying to be an electrician at the moment. But his education system, it was very much angled towards if you end up in the trades, it's because you've not done well at school. And I said to him, I said, you imagine if you got a range of like A-star students, exceptional, intelligent people, and went, go into the trades, be an entrepreneur, set your own business up. Can you imagine how well they'd do? Like if you actually brought the intelligence in as well, in terms of, I mean, then again, I guess maybe you could argue, to play devil's advocate, that people that are academically intelligent haven't got the common sense and physical like aptitude to be a tradesperson. Because I know some incredibly intelligent, really stupid people, if
Yeah,
that makes sense, like they could be nuclear physicists, but if you ask them to put a picture on the wall, no chance.
yeah, definitely.
So I guess we all lean into our strengths, don't
People,
we? But
people with book smarts, not
that's it. Yeah, yeah,
life
book
smarts.
smarts rather than like, yeah, 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 yeah. But it interests me if I think the whole approach of going into the building trades has just got that stigma around it. If that was taken away, and I don't think it ever will be because it doesn't suit the narrative of the education system, but if that was taken away and kids saw it as a viable, good career to get into, um, again, it would boost the trade. It wouldn't be a case of people coming in that were then going to overtake the people that are currently in the trade. I believe in the whole rising tide, raising all boats kind of
Yeah,
theory. You bring the trade up, and certainly I feel that, again, we're probably at the forefront of that in painting and decorating because, we'll be honest, it does get looked down upon. We are
definitely.
sort of viewed as just above the labourer.
Yeah,
And that's why I give massive credit to the likes of yourself, the likes of Kev, Foxy, all previous guests on the podcast, that are all doing their bit on social media to like raise the profile of the industry.
definitely.
Yeah,
Because you can't have people saying that we're having a skilled worker shortage and then continue to say, oh, but it's a failure if you do that.
yeah. What a hypocrite is like. What's the word I'm looking for there? Hypocritical. Oh no, it's hypocritical, but there's a word which I'm mind blank. But yeah, exactly. Like how hypocritical is that? Like you've hit the nail on the head perfectly there. Skills shortage, yet it's a failure to have that skill.
Crazy.
This is it, though, isn't it? It's what the people at the top that are directing. I don't know to point the finger at who, but the education system, whoever's writing the education system and directing the youngsters that are there, that's where the issue lies, isn't it?
There's lots of failures in the schooling system. Like, I know how to work out the volume of a cone, but I failed to my first tax return as a business because I'd never been taught that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, again, we could do a whole podcast on this, to be
Yeah,
honest, Stuart, but the applicable skills that they fail to teach at school, and the opportunity is so blatantly there to me. Like mathematics, for example. Why teach our kids algebra when how many of them are going to go on to be physicists or scientists and all the rest of it? And somebody out there will be telling me that you can use it for other things. But realistically, wouldn't it be better to teach them about APRs, mortgages, interest rates, like you said, tax returns and
First
things like
aid.
that.
That'd be
Yeah.
a great one to
First aid,
learn.
mate. I personally, I believe psychology should be a core
Yeah,
subject.
definitely.
Teach people about the mind, teach people coping mechanisms, teach people all these things that will genuinely improve their quality of life, rather than the stuff that is taught at the moment. Like, I won't get into it, but some of the subjects, we're teaching our kids about ancient Egypt and what happened thousands of years ago, and we're not teaching them how to survive and thrive in today's society. And we've gone off on a tangent,
We
mate.
have,
Let's
we have.
let's go
It's a
back to
recurring
you.
theme, isn't it?
So it is, mate. It's what I love about it. We just drift.
Yeah,
We just drift. Let's go back to you then, mate. So you've obviously left school. You've gone to work with your dad because you needed new handlebars. What happened from there?
just, I just fell in love with the trade. At that time, like a lot of my friends had left school, like that lived locally. A lot of my better friends like went to join the army or they're away to university. So I was kind of like left alone. Joining up with my dad. My dad had a lot of apprentices, and they were all similar ages. So it felt like I got a friendship group back. So I just really enjoyed it. I liked transforming houses, even though it was just new built houses and it's boring, especially back then. It was white ceiling, maggy walls, gloss the woodwork, and then you're into the next house, it's the same again. Houses getting picked apart by idiot site managers.
How was your experience of working on site? Because I know you've touched on this before. So first of all, I guess, how long were you doing site work?
I don't know. I didn't leave sites till I was 30, 35.
And you went into
So
business at
maybe
six.
18 years. So
Okay, that's a long time, isn't it?
I'd been on site since I was 15. Like, but the thought, like going back to then, I used to get really badly picked on the first couple of times I was on a site because I was like quite different to what people are normally like on building sites. Like quiet, the music I listened to didn't fit in, so I used to get things like called a poof or
Really?
a choir boy, things like it's horrible.
And you were
They saw it as banter, like, but
what age were you at that time?
15, 16.
Right. Yeah.
So when I started for my dad, I was like, no, I'm not going to be. I'm going to mask it. Like I'm going to fit in. I'm going to say, oh, I'm into drinking hundreds of pints and yeah, I do drugs. I go out pulling women every weekend. Totally different to how I actually was, but I just wanted to fit in. So like, fake it till you make it. Just masking my own personality, which is detrimental to my mental health at the time. But
So at that point, you felt the need, and that's one of the problems, isn't it? Is that culture or perception of people in the building trades, and then it's like that toxic sort of circle, isn't it? You felt the need to fit into that. Now maybe you faked it, but there's also people that will follow it and become it.
yeah, and like to be fair, like I sort of started to fall into it, like leading into like a dabble in drugs and drinking and like not being a nice person, like just because when you fake something for long enough, it does sort of become your personality eventually if you do it for long
Yeah.
enough. But I think I managed to snap out of it eventually, and I just started like not caring about what people thought of me. And I will say like, oh, I do like that type of music. I do like playing PlayStation. Like I do like watching WWE or something like that. It doesn't mean I'm gay. It just means I'm different.
So that was what you got, that you got labelled as you're gay
Yeah.
because of a change in music and watching wrestling and things. Yeah, I mean, see, this is the thing, isn't it? Like that word banter. Um, it's so easy to mask bullying with the word banter. Like, and I'm a big advocate for genuine banter,
Yeah.
but genuine banter shouldn't be an attack on somebody that becomes hurtful.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's how it's perceived by the person that you know, because I might think it's banter, but if if it's upsetting to somebody else and it isn't, then it is bullying.
I think it was the culture as well, because like everybody they listen to dance music, where I was into things like Blink-182 and Newfound Glory. I used to go and ride BMX. I went to skate parks, so I was like, oh, golf, emo, and I was like, I'm not, I just
That's
like,
what you like.
yeah,
Yeah. It's I don't know whether, see, I haven't done a fat lot of site work myself.
hmm
I've generally been in the domestic market, but I believe site work it's a little bit more pack. You know what I mean? A bit more gangy, pack, fit in with the crowd, that kind of thing. Would that be right?
yeah. It can be quite toxic, especially like towards painters. So it's like you can. I'm not saying like everybody's perfect, but some people just don't care. Like that it's just about getting in, slap a coat on the walls, and get out. My dad taught me and my brother differently, and like everybody that worked for my dad to take a bit of pride in their work. But it's hard when like you're like, I think I've done a really good job at that house, and the ground worker comes in with his mucky boots, and it's halfway up the wall. Joiner comes in with a lengthy skirt, and it's scratched the wall, and it's so downheartening to
Mm.
see something you've like put your blood, sweat, and tears into, and it's just destroyed. And then you get the blame for it because the site manager doesn't care that another trade done it. It's like, oh, that's rough. That's rough because this place is caked in mud.
Yeah, they think you've come and thrown mud up it.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
my dad's favourite catchphrase was I didn't put the dirt in the paint.
Mm. Yeah, no, well, it's true, mate, isn't it? And I think this is one of the things. I mean, the purpose of the podcast being to get people talking about mental health, but a lot of the time we're kind of like our own worst enemy in construction, and the tribalism between trades. I mean, again, it's like a moonshot romantic view of things, but can you imagine how different it would be if each trade respected each other and lifted each other up? It would lift the whole industry as a whole. Because what happens is that whole opinion thing, like the famous "if you can piss, you can paint."
Yeah.
And I know I might sound salty here because I'm a decorator, but that whole thing, because that gets promoted within construction in certain groups, and I do think it's changing for the record. I do think that social media helps with that kind of thing, but the fact that other trades promote those messages, it doesn't stay within construction. That floats outside.
Yeah.
So that then damages the value of the trade to our clients and customers. And we're all out there just trying to earn a living. And I think that's one of the things that we need to sort of focus on as a industry whole, you know, as construction, as an industry. We need to focus on the fact that the value of it rises across all trades. And the more we attack each other, it actually devalues each trade to people outside of construction as well as in it.
Yeah, 100%.
Because then you then get people that have never worked in construction that will turn around and think, oh, that's easy. You know, it's just slapping a bit of paint on.
And it always gets like back to the site manager or the quality inspector, and because the painter's the last person, they get the full blame. But you're only ever as good as the trade in front of you.
Of course.
So if the joiner's made a mess, or like, I think it's down here, it's mostly plastering work on the new builds, isn't it?
Depends what site, mate. So some sites still plaster, but more and more it's tape and joint now.
It's always been. I've always known Ames taping, and
Yeah.
up where I am. So like if the taping's no great or the joiner's no great, if the plumber's made a mess, it all affects the quality of the product, the finished product for the painter.
Mm.
But it's always us to get it in the neck. And the things I've seen on snagging lines would honestly, you'd buckle yourself laughing.
In terms of like what sort of thing?
I got a snagging line once, and it was a post-it note. He put it next to it. There was a dead fly on the ceiling. I think I've got a picture of it somewhere.
That was a snag.
Yeah, I think I've got a picture on my Facebook because I couldn't help but laugh at it. And it's like, you could have just moved that, or like where you've sanded something. Like if you've caught something on the way out the door, and you're like, oh, I could fill that, give it a wee sand, touch it up, and some of the powder for the sand goes up on the ceiling. Somebody's got the big tourist Blackpool pencil and marked it with, and they've like dug the pencil in, so you actually have to fill the pencil mark. Whereas you could have just got your duster out your pocket. scooshed it away.
I mean, why did you put that fly on the ceiling, Stuart?
I don't know. It was a tricky one getting to stay there, especially as it was dead. It was like, put blue tack on it, chuck it up.
Look, mate, I mean, to me, like, I mean, although I found that funny in the moment, I can't imagine the mentality of the person that would have snagged that. But then, is that actually a degree of bullying? Is that like taking the piss? Because that, like, that just sounds daft. Like, anyone to me with common sense would. How do you snag a painter for? You know what I mean?
Oh, I remember there's one time on a site on Stirling I was on, and I actually, and bear in mind, Stirling's a good like 45 miles away from my house. I
Mm,
stormed off the site and got a train home because I was so pissed off. Um, the house we were working in was an absolute tip. There was glass wool everywhere, uh, mud everywhere. It hadn't been swept out for us, and we were at the glossing stage, and you came with glosses, like especially oil-based stuff, hangs for so long. Had
mm.
to paint the doors. We painted the doors, went in the next day, and the site manager had went in and marked every tiny imperfection on every door with a Sharpie. And I was like, what the fuck have you done? So do you have any idea how much work we have to do now to get rid of first the Sharpie
Mm.
before we even do anything else? Yeah, but they're not great doors. It's like, what do you want us to do? Like, we can only work to the conditions you're giving us. I was like, no, I'm not fucking having this. Stormed to the site, walked the 20 minutes for the site to the train station, and I just got a train home. It's just,
I can understand that, mate. I mean, just to any listener that might be listening to this that doesn't understand what the big deal is there, a Sharpie being like a permanent marker type pen on a door, which you can't, I mean, one, you can't get it off. And two, to get rid of that, you've then got to stain block it and start again for the whole thing, haven't you? So, I mean, I don't know, like the reasonable thing to put a note or whatever it might be, something that can be removed.
can you sand that and maybe regloss it when we've cleaned the house out or something? No, just fucking Sharpie it.
Sharpie it, yeah.
It
No,
was a
that
five-bedroom house with like two en suites, two bathrooms.
mm,
Like, you could be easily talking about 25, 30 doors,
yeah.
both sides.
I guess having not really done a lot of that industry myself, I think the thing that I can probably liken to it the most is we used to do a lot of insurance contracting, which was a bit of a strange demographic because you were contracted to restore the damage to its condition prior to the claim. So, say there'd been a leak or fire damage, whatever that might be, your job was to return it to its condition prior to the claim. I.e., so if there was watermark on the ceiling and walls, you'd stain block it and paint it. But if there were cracks and holes that weren't caused by the damage, you weren't allowed to
Oh,
repair
really?
it. Because if you repaired it, like say it was two walls in a four wall room, if you made those two walls distinctly better than the other two, you'd be liable to paint the whole room, but you wouldn't get paid for it because the
Oh,
insurance company would only pay to return it to its prior condition. So it was a restorative thing rather than
mm.
a decorative job. And there used to be conflict because customers would be like, oh, you haven't done that or you've missed that. And you literally had to respond with, but you'd missed it before. So we're not here to do that. We're just here to return it to the claim. Um, and I remember having real battles with, for me, a big part of the job is the job satisfaction and being able to walk out and thinking I've done a mint job there. So I think that's where I'd struggle with site work because it comes into play. It's more of a time, isn't it? It's getting it passable rather than as good as possible. Is that right?
Yeah, like going back to what you're saying about like painting being looked down on, we even get it from other painters. You see it on social
Mm,
media a lot, like people that have only ever been in domestics. You see it's like house bashers,
yeah.
uh, house crashers, brush monkeys, all that type of thing. And there's genuine people out there on site. I'm not saying they're all perfect. Like I've worked with some real cowboys that just didn't give a fuck about anything, like slapping a bit of emulsion on the skirting and then get a coat of gloss.
Mm,
But to be fair, like the deadlines are so tight.
yeah.
It's like they do have to find corners, but they're not doing it because they want to do that. They're doing it because the deadline's like this house needs done. Like it's all well and good to sales people selling houses, and then you'll get the project manager. You say like, right, that house needs to be done in 6 weeks. But if the joiner takes, he's like, it'll take me a week. But if it takes him a week and a day, that time comes out to you. The plumber,
Mm,
it'll take me a week. week and a day. You're 2 days down already. Joiners in for a second fix.
Yeah.
It's another day. So by the time it gets to the painter's turn, he can have 3 or 4 days eating out his time.
Yeah. I experienced that myself before, and I think it's another consideration because the statistics around mental health show that decorators and plasterers are the two worst affected trades, and it's the two finishing trades, the ones at the end. And I've been in that situation previously. We used to do pub refurbs, and there would be a set period of time, like say between tenancies or extending tenancies, where they'd shut the pub for, I don't know, it might be 3 weeks. And the reason I actually left the contract was because the main contractor tried to push the financial penalty onto me after cutting my time on the job by a week and telling me I had the same deadline because the electricians had run over. And he was like, well, the pub's shut for 3 weeks. If it goes over that, the tenant, then we have to pay the tenant loss of earnings and we'll have to split that between all contractors. I was like, no, that ain't happening. But again, it's a consideration that in terms of like building work, site work and stuff like that, being the last man in, you do catch all the shit. And not only do you catch the financial side of it, I feel like on certain jobs, say if a customer's had an extension built, generally it's quite stressful and the customer can be as happy as anything day one, but by 3 months down the line where the builder's overran, there's been extra money because the footings had to go deeper, this has gone wrong, that's had to be moved, this person's let them down. By the time the decorator turns up, that customer's already pissed off.
Yeah.
And you then end up walking into a customer that is literally like, what the fuck's going to go wrong now?
That translates to site work as well. If they've had a bad experience with the site manager trying to get work done, because I ended up going into the customer care side of things, like for my dad, and then after that, when me and my brother had a company, I'd done most of the customer care as well. But if they've had a bad experience with the sales, the site manager, different trades going into fixed little snags, by the time it comes to me, they're already pissed off. And sometimes if they wanted to sort of like have a dig at the site manager, they would take it out through us. So it's like, well, I'll show them. I'm going to go daft with the snagging, tiny wee bit here that you can only see at 11 o'clock at night when the street light bounces off the car windscreen and just hits the ceiling. You're spending 20 minutes looking at the ceiling. Sorry, where is this? Yeah, you can only see it at 11 o'clock at night.
It's mad, isn't it?
What do you mean? I can't see it now. I've shone my phone like that. I can't see anything.
Yeah, I've been there, mate. I've been there on a few contracts recently that have literally blown my mind in terms of some of the snagging. I don't know whether I had this chat with Jay, actually. I was talking to him and we were saying, like, I don't know whether social media's kind of promoted that in terms of customers' expectations.
Yeah, maybe.
No, it's the expectation of perfect. And we're all guilty of it being in the trades. We take pictures of jobs, you get the best angle, you get that bit. I ain't quite happy with that. I'm not taking a photo of it.
Take the before picture with the light off and the after picture with the light on, so it looks a bit brighter.
Yeah, that's it. But I don't know whether we're kind of building a rod for our own back in doing that. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe. Yeah. We all try to show our own work in the best light.
Yeah, absolutely.
Victims of our own downfall.
Potentially, yeah. And then customers are obviously referencing social media when their expectations of a finish, which we try and do our best, but there's a lot of mitigating factors.
To be fair, it's getting harder because we all take pictures on our phones, but the cameras on phones are getting so much better now. They pick up the time, they see things you can't actually see with your eye.
Yeah.
I know I've done videos where I've been trying to do a video of me cutting in, and I think I've filled everything, and then I'll watch back the video and I'm like, can I post that? that's rough as that ceiling's rough as fuck. I'm gonna have to fill that, sand that before I.
Do you know what though, mate? When I've done that personally myself, and I've took a picture and I thought, I can't post that. I'm not thinking of the customer. I'm thinking of the other decorators. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, definitely.
Because there is that sort of like, it's like a bunch of circling sharks. Like if they think there's blood in the water, they'll go in for the kill. And again, we're not helping.
For the most part, they're a supportive group, like especially on social media. You do get some of the. It seems to be like a lot of the dinosaurs that are on social media. They don't post pictures of their stuff. They're just there to like go, that's shite.
Yeah. Again, previous conversation I had with a guest, and we were talking about the fact that in the building trades, It was Reese, actually, I think. We were talking about the building trades, that there's no middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's either you are the best or you are shit. There's no, he's an average or, slightly above average or slightly below average. I see it as a pyramid, personally. But there's no, when it comes to socials and people going in, it's either that is perfect work or that is fucking atrocious work.
I've been guilty of it myself. Like, I've had a complete mindset shift since I started up myself. Because I think because the way building sites are, it's all about speed. So it's competitive. You're often told by contract managers, if you can't manage it, we'll just get somebody else. And there's always somebody with a bigger company that'll be like, oh, you can't paint that house in 3 days. I'll put 10 guys in there. No problem. We'll get that done. We'll take that contract off of them. It's dog eat dog. Well, I don't know if that's like down, but if it's like that down here, but certainly up our way, it's dog eat dog.
I couldn't say, to be honest, my own personal experience. I try and avoid it. I try and avoid site work or working for builders because I've got a real pet hate around working around other trades. Because you also, I tend to find with builders as a decorator, you get used as like the whipping stick.
Yeah.
So it's like decorators in Friday, you need to, and they'll use that to try and push everyone else on.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you turn up and it's not done, and there's this bit and that bit, and nobody accounts for the fact that we're then getting delayed. Nobody's paying us for that.
Yeah.
So
going back to my mindset shift, me and my brother we always thought we had like a decent balance of speed and quality. So if anybody couldn't do a house as fast as us, we were like, that's crap, eh? Like they can't do a house as fast as us. But if anybody was faster than us, we're like, they're fucking cutting corners. They're cheating. And then like the first couple of months, as I started up for myself, as I did have that sort of like, I'm in competition with everybody. Like I need to beat these people at jobs, but like, I soon realised like everybody's like really supportive. There's only a couple of decorators in my area that I don't get on with, and it's strictly because they don't like me. Like if we're both in the paint shed, they won't say a word to me. They'll just completely blank me and like pretend I'm not there.
What is the paint shed? Is that your local merchant?
I think it's like Brewers.
Okay.
But it's just like, I think Brewers actually, they've got an affiliation somewhere. I don't know if Brewers own them or something along, like, under the same umbrella.
So are there multiple branches of paint shed in Scotland?
But they're an independent paint retailer in Scotland.
Okay. I could, just out of interest. I've not heard of them, but obviously being
I think they're trying to get a lot of decorators down here to sign up to like their online delivery. I've seen it quite a bit on social media recently. A lot of decorators, especially like further south than this, have been getting deliveries, and I think they're just trying to expand a bit.
It's an interesting market, actually, mate. I'll be interested to see where it goes, because you've got, a few years ago, the likes of My Paintbrush and stuff like that didn't exist. But now, and I've had this conversation in trade centres where I've gone in and gone, well, if I want to buy a decent brush now, I've got to get it online, because the stuff that you guys stock is crap. But yeah, there we go. That's a trade related. Let's get back to you, Stuart. So, in terms of the high pressure environment that you were working on inside, like how was it for your mental health being in those kind of environments?
I think because I was working for my dad at the time, he shouldered all the stress. But I was just like, I've always been a very like day-to-day person. Like, if I have a bad day at work, I'd like get home, turn the PlayStation on, unwind a wee bit, and then I'm sort of back to normal. After my dad had died, and me and my brother started up, and it was more on our responsibility, it started to affect me a lot more. Bad days at work were just turned into bad nights at home.
And how was that handover? Because obviously you mentioned your father passing away. Did you take over the business straight after that, or how
no? Because my dad was a sole director, so like my dad died very suddenly, and me and my brother, we didn't have any access to his accounts, insurance.
Oh, really?
We had to set up a new company, so the house builder we were working for, we didn't have a contract with him. So luckily my dad was good friends with the surveyor for that company, so he kind of like looked after us a bit. But our face didn't fit with that house builder, so they were actually trying to get rid of us before we'd even had my dad's funeral.
Right. So just trying to understand the situation a bit, mate. So you and your brother were working for your dad's business.
Mm-hmm.
Your dad passed away suddenly, and then that essentially left you and your brother out of
Work,
work.
yeah. And my dad died on site.
He, he died on site.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
So my dad had a big company at one stage in his life. Obviously, I think 2008 with the recession, he'd started to downsize it because he used to have sites like up and down the country, as far north as Aberdeen, as far
Hmm.
west as Glasgow. Sites absolutely everywhere. Like I said, my dad used to take me about in his car to pay his guys, go to site meetings, and like, spend a day going up to Aberdeen, Dundee. It was better times. But like getting back to it, 2008, my dad started winding down his company because it was getting small because of the
Hmm.
recession. House
I was
builders
going to
were,
say 2008 was a recession, wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think he only narrowed it down to like 2 or 3 sites for one house builder. So he's like putting all
Hmm.
his eggs in one basket because they had promised him they were going to build through the recession.
Yeah.
Like all the other house builders had started to really slow down, a couple of houses a month. But the house builder we were working for, we were going to plough on through this. You're a preferred contractor. Like we'll keep you nice. Like we'll look after you. So eventually I finished sites, and then there was only like one, I think 2 sites my dad had, and we were just working away. My dad was an Ames taper, so my dad and my uncle were working in a house across the road, taping it,
Hmm.
and my brother actually wasn't working that day. I think he'd went to a stock car meeting
Oh,
on the.
your uncle was in the business as well?
Yeah,
Oh,
my
right.
uncle
It's
was
a
a names
real
taper.
family business.
At one point, both my uncles were working for it, but my dad's brother, but they'd had a falling out, and
Hmm.
they didn't speak. But he worked for it at one point. Not in the time I worked for the company, I don't think though. But my mum's brother worked for my dad, and they were working side by side. I was working in the house across the road. My brother had took a day off because I think he'd been down to Coventry or Skegness. He'd been at a stock car meeting. Uh, so we're working away. It's a normal day. Actually, it wasn't a normal weekend. My dad had pulled me and my brother in for a meeting at home and said like the company's really struggling. I know it's a lot to ask. Could you just go a couple of weeks without wages just to tide the storm? It's like my dad has always looked after us, so of course we did.
Hmm.
He cancelled absolutely everything except the insurance, and we were driving up to Stirling on the Monday, and it's just little things I picked up, like the way my dad was speaking. It's like he'd never mentioned like having a dig in a grave before, like wanting a shave, and I was like, it's a weird thing for my dad to say. Like this is something's not
He
right.
said what? Sorry.
It's like Cockney Rhyming Slam, like, oh, I should have had a dig in a grave at the weekend because he'd like overgrown.
Oh, digging a grave
He
shave.
wanted
Right.
us,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so he had a bit of stubble. It's like, it's not something I remember my dad ever saying. Other things he said on the way up, I was like, something's not sitting right here. So thought it was a normal day. We've had our break, it was fine. Went down to the canteen for lunch. My dad had a very quick bite to eat. Said he wasn't feeling well. Went back, he's like, I'm just going to go back up to work, take my mind off it. And so I finished having my lunch, and the canteen was a decent walk for the houses we were working in. So I started walking back up about 10 or 20 minutes later to the house I was working in. I met my dad about halfway, and he was like, I need to take something for this indigestion. It's so bad. Like, and little did I know that would be the last thing my dad ever said to me. He took some indigestion tablets, went back to work, and maybe 15, 20 minutes later, my uncle came storming into the house telling me that he'd collapsed. Um, of course, like I didn't think how bad it could possibly be. I thought he maybe had like fell or something. So I didn't want to get in trouble for going out the house onto the site without my hard hat on and high vis jacket on because you got in shit for things like that for the site manager.
Yeah.
I stormed across, and he was just lying at the top of the stair, completely unconscious, struggling for breath, and like, I started giving him CPR, but like going back to high school, I'd never been trained in first aid, didn't know what I was doing. So I, I was trying to do CPR, I was on the phone to the site labourer who was the first aider on site, and he came running up and like I was so grateful for what he tried to do, even though it was unsuccessful. But like, he was giving CPR. I phoned the ambulance. They It felt like the ambulance took forever to come, but I bet it was less than 5 minutes. And like,
Mm.
I'm phoning Claire to tell her what's happened, phoning my mum. It was just a difficult time. The ambulance came, tried to revive him, eventually got him on a stretcher into the ambulance, and it's just wee things I picked up on in the ambulance. Like they were like, he really shouldn't be here. Like, his son shouldn't be here. So
Mm.
like, we're going to take him to the hospital. Have you got transport? And my uncle drove us to the hospital, but yeah, it wasn't good news.
Oh, I'm sorry, mate. I'm sorry. But was it a heart attack? Is it?
Yeah, it had a
Yeah.
was it a myocardiac infraction, I think. Because like
Fucking
at
hell.
the time, like I struggled because I felt guilty because the on the phone they're like get him flat, but his like legs were sort of hanging over the stair, and my dad was a big guy, so I couldn't lift him and manoeuvre him. So I was like, have I done something wrong? Did I not give CPR properly? Did we get there too late? I think like the doctor said there was nothing we could do. It's like
Mm.
effectively his heart blew up.
And I mean, looking back at everything that you've told me about the situation, because I would imagine for your dad to have said to you at the point of it, mate, your brother and you not having wages, things must have been really tough. Did your dad talk to you prior to that about how the business was, or did he keep all that to himself?
He kept most of it to himself, but he was always going on about how the house builder were late paying him or short paying him, and sometimes like weeks went without wages for the guys,
Mm.
which was hard for us because they always assumed me and my brother got wages if they didn't.
Mm.
Because like I remember like when I was playing for a football team and we'd had a team night out and the wages hadn't been paid, and like because I didn't really drink or anything, I actually had a bit of money, so like we're trying to raise funds for something. I think one of the guys had a broken leg or something. And it was near Christmas. And it was like to try and get his kids some presents. So I bought like a load of raffle tickets, and not so much the guys we were working with, but their girlfriends were like, "Well, seeing he got paid." Like my dad would never do that because he knew the animosity that
Mm.
would cause. So if the guys didn't get paid, me and my brother didn't get paid either.
So, I mean, you'd sort of have to, I mean, just me hearing that story would have to assume that the stress played a massive part
Yeah,
in what
definitely.
happened there.
Like I said, like because my dad had put all his eggs in one basket with this
Mm.
house builder, if they didn't pay him, he had no money coming in.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's the stress and the pressure of having all those responsibilities and lads. And I would imagine that that would have weighed on him.
Hmm.
Is yeah, I've had lads work for me in the past, and there's definitely that responsibility when that comes in, and you know that you're responsible for maybe five, six lads, and by the sounds of it, your dad's company was a lot bigger. Um, you know that you're responsible for all those families and that network of people.
Yeah, my dad always put his guys first. Um, so the house had had a leak. My dad got insurance money through it, and instead of using the insurance money, I think I should be saying this. The insurance company might be watching it, but instead of like getting it properly repaired, he got a quick
Mm.
fix done so he could use the insurance money to pay his guys. Like, my mum was like used to do the payroll for him, and she often went weeks, months without getting wages. I think my mum's auntie died once and left her a decent bit of inheritance, and that went to paying guys as well at one point.
Fucking hell.
So my dad poured everything into his business, and sometimes it wasn't reciprocated by the guys that worked for him. Don't get me
Mm.
wrong, there's guys out there that still reach out now and say like, "Your dad was the best boss I ever had." But there's some guys that were just like I thought were friends, and they just turned their back on me because my dad hadn't paid them, and they just saw it as like, well, he should have money.
How many, just so I can sort of visualise, how many people did your dad have on? How many lads were in the company?
At that time, maybe 8 or 10.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. It's a lot of wages, isn't it?
Yeah,
If you, I don't know what the average wage would have been back then, but if you multiply that by 10 per week, it's a lot of money. It doesn't take long to fall very far behind when you're dealing with those margins. And if you're not getting paid, it's, like you say, it don't take long.
especially when it comes to things like, well, they take a percentage off for retention. Uh,
Yeah.
you've got to fight tooth and nail for day works. If some other trade has destroyed your work, the company we worked for, the house builders, they didn't like contra charging. The way they saw it was an electrician will bugger up a joiner's work just as often as a joiner will bugger up an electrician work, so it evens out. But we're like, but everybody buggers up our work.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to ruin a radiator. We're not going to destroy a facing. We're not going to destroy a light fitting. Like, everything we do gets
Falls on,
destroyed.
yeah. Christ, mate. I mean, yeah, that particular time must have been extremely difficult. So you've had to process your father passing away, and then you've got the pressure of trying to sort out what immediately you're out of work. I mean, how did you process that? How did you cope with that?
I think me and my brother, we took about 2 weeks. The first week we were trying to get the funeral organised and like just look after our mum. And then the second week, my brother and his wife, like we got together and we were like, right, well, we need to try and get a business off the ground so that we actually have a wage coming in. And at the time in my dad's passing, we only really had 5 guys working because we only had one site on at that time. We'd walked off the bigger one because of stresses with the site manager. Uh, so the guys that were working for my dad just came and worked for me and my brother, but at the same time, because we just kind of had like a soft launch business, we couldn't pay them for the first 3 weeks, which, and they were a bit pissed off with that, but it was what it was. Like, we didn't have cash flow. We started with nothing. The only, a lot of people offered help, but like you were saying pre-record about people disappearing, or there were vultures. There was one guy that was like, "Oh, I'll take the site over for you," but he was another painting contractor. He wanted the site because it was a big site. It's like 7 years' work. So the only person that actually came through, and it was because of mutual benefit, it was my dad's account at Dulux. They said, "Look, we're not going to be bastards. If you don't want to settle your dad's debt, that's up to you. But if you did, we'll continue his trade discount with you. We'll just transfer it," which was a decent head start for us because my dad had used Dulux Decorator Centre for 15 years, 20 years. Built up a decent discount with them. Like, we knew the manager for that store really well, so he always looked after us. He invited me and my brother to a couple of darts events that they were sponsoring. So it was really good.
So then you and your brother had to start. Did you continue on site work at that point?
Yeah, and then eventually it just became me and my brother and my uncle. He would tape houses and just me and my brother painting them,
Okay.
which the house builder didn't like because there's only basically 3 people. They wanted mass products. So it ended up me and my brother working till 9, 10 o'clock at night.
And you had to do all that. I mean, look, I know launching a business is stressful anyway. If you're on level footing when you make that step and you've got all the pressures and stresses of doing that, but you've done that on the back of unexpectedly losing your dad as well. I mean, massive credit to you for one, for getting back up and carrying on, because there's people handle things very differently, and it can certainly be a trigger point for a lot of people to spiral in the wrong direction. So all credit to you for carrying it on, mate, and sort of carrying on your dad's legacy by you and your brother continuing it. So all credit to you for that, mate.
The house builder were really a bunch of bastards. we found out for the site manager when we started back, because he was actually one of the better ones. He was like, look, I'm just going to tell you this right now. The contracts manager, like after your dad's funeral, was like, they better be back on site on Monday. If they're not back on site on Monday, get another decorating for them.
Fuck you know. Yeah. Do you know what, mate? I mean, that kind of stuff there illustrates where balance has got to be in life, you know? And people, all too often, are self employed. We work ourselves into the ground, 80-hour weeks, 90-hour weeks. We prioritize work over everything else. But that there just shows a really key point that you can be replaced. The only place you can't be replaced is at your home and your family, your wife, your kids, and all the rest of it. You can't be replaced for them. But when it comes to work, as important as it is to support our loved ones, it's to know where the balance is, because, don't sacrifice people that can't replace you for those that can, essentially. And that's a key example. The zero compassion. We just need to get on with what we're doing.
And even then, continuing on with that, when me and my brother eventually did get back on site, like, I had major anxiety about going into the house my dad had died in.
Oh, fucking hell.
But I was just like, I had to suck it up and do it. But
Hold on, you had to go back in to the house that your father had passed away in and finish the house.
start it. My dad died on a Monday, and him and my uncle had only started Ames taping it on the Monday morning. So they'd only got the first couple of tapes on. And by the time we went back 2 weeks later, there was radiators on the walls, facings, skirtings, handrail, doors were on. The house hadn't even. The house was still 4 days away from being finished, taped and sanded.
I mean, mate, don't get me wrong. I can see from a big building point of view, it's not like they couldn't finish the house. Like, they
Yeah.
had to finish it. But I would think, personally, from a human perspective, that you would just get somebody else, even if it's just a single contractor, to do one house,
Mm-hmm.
to carry that through. But that wasn't the case.
No, definitely not. And then so my uncle had to. It took him longer to tape the house because he's trying to navigate around facings and skirtings. I don't think they've even got the first externals on, so you can imagine the finish is external tape on top of skirtings, so it doesn't look right.
Mm.
And then obviously it was harder to sand to get it painted because everything was on.
the the emotional impact of that, though, mate. I mean, this comes down to responsibility. I had a chat with a chap called Dan. His episode isn't out yet, and he's in management and construction, and we were talking about like the responsibility of managers. And when you're, even if you're business orientated and your key is right, you want to get these lads back to work as quickly as possible, you don't do it with a whip. You support and you provide the best support possible to get you back healthy. Because in theory, getting you lads in and being like, right, you need to finish that house now, you're behind, and forcing you into that environment, you could quite easily have just spiraled down and gone, fuck this, and left. And, gone off. And as many people do, mate, and it's not knocking them, people turn to drink, they turn to drugs, they turn to all their it's coping mechanisms, whatever it might be, their coping mechanisms they turn to. But that kind of behaviour could easily have pushed you to a position where actually then they do lose you.
Mm-hmm.
Then they don't get the job done. It don't make any sense to me.
I think that would have suited him, to be honest. My dad's face didn't fit with that company. They wanted rid of him. My dad absolutely hated that contracts manager. And like, it's one of the only things I properly regret about the whole thing was when we got taken to the hospital. Like like I said, my uncle drove us, but we had the two guys that were working with us in the car as well. But they were in the car park, and my uncle went out to see how like they were when the nurse came and like it's like, we're just going to take you into this room, like you're not getting good news at that point. But I've never been spiritually orientated. Like faith's a blessing that I've yet to receive. But I remember sitting there in the waiting area at the hospital, and I could like feel something above me. Like I kind of I felt it was like you're going to get bad news. I felt a presence anyway. I've never felt it since. I got taken into the waiting room, and like I was all alone when they told me my dad had died. And they're like, "There's a phone there if you need to make any phone calls." And I looked at my mobile and I had a missed call. and I didn't know if my mum's battery had died or something, trying to get in touch with me. So I rang this number to see who it was, and it was the contracts manager for the builder. And they're like, "Oh, we just heard the news. Is your dad all right?" And I was like, just because I was still in shock, I was like, "He's died." I was like, that was the first person, except for me, that had been told my dad had died, and it was something my dad absolutely hated. And because I was kind of aware of what had happened, like I kind of prepared myself for it, but because I was alone in the room, every time somebody came in, I had to tell them the news. And like I remember when my mum came in, and like, it just breaks my heart. Like when she got told that my dad had died.
Yeah, I can imagine, mate. I can imagine. That's not that. It's a horrific time for anyone that experiences that, mate. You know, I can see how painful it still is. That's all right, man. We take a moment, yeah. No, that's incredibly tough. The pressure's on you at that point. It's all. It's always worse when it's so unexpected as well. And grief, mate. I know, having been through it myself, the processing of grief as men, we just bottle it, try and close the lid, stick it in the corner, hope it goes away. And people talk about time being a great healer. I don't believe it is. My own experience with grief, I think that it remains raw. It remains sharp as it happened the day that it did. I believe that time just gives us coping mechanisms. I believe over time we learn how to cope. Unfortunately, being men, a lot of our coping mechanisms is to hide it, stick it in a corner, shut the door, try and lock it away, and that's the way that we deal with things. I mean, to ask you the question, mate, like how, when you had all that to process and the pressure of the business and everything there, like what were your coping mechanisms? How did you cope with that period of your life?
I honestly don't know. It's really bizarre. Like I remember stupid little details about that day, but I don't remember a lot after. I just remember like being a lot of family around about us, and I just don't remember a great deal actually. A
Yeah,
lot is a blur. I've not actually thought about that
I think
the days after.
part of it's a trauma response,
Yeah.
mate. I mean, obviously, I've mentioned to you pre-record, I lost my grandfather, who was more like my father at the time, and that was after a short battle with cancer. And I look back to like those days, and it's took me years to talk about this, mate. So I completely understand your pain. But yeah, it's similar. I don't really remember those days. I think I probably threw myself into organising, processing the arrangements, and that sort of thing. And other guests that I've spoken to when it comes to bereavements and sudden bereavements, they all process it differently. Unfortunately, some turn to substances, whether it's drink or drugs or whatever, to mask it. But it doesn't sound like you went that way, fortunately.
No, I remember I was struggling to sleep, so I think Claire got in touch with somebody to get me a wee bit of smoke just to help me
Yeah,
drift off to
yeah,
sleep.
fair enough. Yeah,
But I think that was the only time
dealer over there in the corner.
you can take the girl out of garment in.
Yeah, mate, I'm very open on my sort of feelings towards that kind of thing. I think it's perfectly fine. I really do. Anything herbal to me is, at the end of the day, alcohol's the biggest, the drug that probably causes more problems than anything else. So stuff like a bit of herbal remedy to help you sleep, mate, I've got no reservations on that. But yeah, tough time, mate.
Yeah,
Tough
definitely.
time. I mean, moving beyond that, so obviously you and your brother have then picked the business up and moved on, stayed in site work. Now, I know that you're not in site work now. So what happened in that gap? Like, how did that?
So it's actually a massive sense of pride for me and my brother that we managed to finish that site,
Hmm.
despite all the obstacles that were thrown in our path, we still managed to get it done. However, the contracts, like we were told, like that house builder's going to expand into our uh, more into our area, so they're going to open up sites. They were going to be so busy on our side of Scotland, they were going to open up an Edinburgh office. But the contracts manager said, any sites in my area, they didn't get a tender for it. They weren't getting the price it.
As in you?
Yeah, me and my brother.
So it was like a vendetta between
Yeah,
you
they
guys?
had a massive vendetta against us. I think he was really sore that we'd actually managed to finish the site, stayed on the site. But he was the area manager for like Central Scotland, so he was like, they don't get a tender for any of them. And then the promises of sites upon sites didn't materialise. They only had one or two. We didn't get to tender the prices for them, and that contracts manager resigned his position a couple of weeks later. So
What was behind that, mate? Like, why was he so personally vindictive towards you guys?
he didn't like my dad, so he didn't like us. They wanted another painting firm involved,
Right.
a bigger one, and we were just seen as an inconvenience.
Mm.
So it stuck in their throat that we managed to stay with them, but then like he just shafted us. Like, they're not getting a tender any of the new sites, and by the way, I'm resigning, so that's them fucked.
So by him resigning, didn't that open the door for you?
No, because the sites were already started with contracts in place with other painting firms.
So he appointed them all, then resigned.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a next level of bitterness, mate. I mean, you'd think you'd done something personally to him.
Yeah. But luckily, like, there was another painting firm in my hometown, and my dad was quite friendly with him. So I phoned him on the Friday, and I was just like, is there any chance you can maybe subby me and my brother and my uncle for a bit of work? And he's like, this is brilliant timing, Stuart. I was about to put an advert out for more painters because we're needing stuff done. How long are you needing? It's like, till Christmas would be good. It's like, maybe 6 months. It's like, start Monday. I'll put you on a site in Bilston. It's just up the road from me, so it was ideal. And we ended up working for him for 9 years. It was just subcontracting.
Okay.
All the stress was gone. We didn't have to go looking for sites. He just told us, there's a house here, you go there, house there, go and do that. So a lot of the business side of it was taken away from us. So the stress was a bit relieved.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to ask the question, mate. I mean, does that play on your mind in terms of the stress? Obviously, with what happened to your dad, I think it would be reasonable for anyone to be quite conscious of stress levels when it comes to...
Well, we were a bit worried because we'd been told my dad was the preferred contractor for that house builder at one point. And suddenly his face didn't fit, so me and my brother's face didn't fit afterwards. All the sites that were in driving distance for us had already been applied for. We didn't know, how do you reach out to Taylor Wimpey? How do you reach out to Redrow? How do you reach out to these house builders to actually get in their books to get a chance to price these? We didn't have a clue how to do that. So it was just it was an easy option to just be subcontracted to another firm.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. But does that play on your mind in terms of stress levels? And obviously what happened to your dad and work and that, like, are you conscious of your own stress levels?
Yeah, I'm pretty much always stressed out.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you sort of navigate that? Take it you got a good lady keeping an eye on you in the corner over there.
She kicks my arse. That's that kind of sets me out.
Do you know what? If I'm honest with you, if I look back through most of my guests' episodes that have been through bad times, trauma, dark times, all the rest of it, 9 times out of 10 it links to having good support. Myself included. I was sort of spiraling, I guess, into toxic behaviour of my own through stress until I met my wife and she made me face my demons, as it were.
Well, it's just, she's got experience. She's had her own mental health struggles, so she knows what she's talking about.
It, mate, definitely it's huge, isn't it? Having somebody in your corner that understands and that you can actually sort of open up to. So, yeah. How did you end up not doing site work then, mate? If you did that for 9 years subcontracting, like, does your brother work with you now?
No,
No.
no,
Oh, okay.
he kind of kept going,
So is he still doing site work?
on and off. Yeah.
Right.
Um, I don't know what actually happened. I thought everything was going all right, but my brother just said to me like one day, "Look, this business model isn't working.
Mm.
Um, it would make more sense for us to go fully self-employed. You get your own UTR number, and
Mm.
like do that. It's effectively like that way. There's no holiday pay, there's no sick pay. Like you're
Mm.
basically just self-employed. But it goes going back to toxic culture on site. I'd had a really bad experience on the last site I was on, and that made my mind up for me. Well, I say it made my mind up for me. The good lady over there was like, "You're getting the fuck off site.
Well
Like
done, Claire.
you've got enough homers, you've got enough client base. Like you could go out and just do it yourself."
Tell me
And
about that, mate. What happened?
so it goes back to like different painters and some moody shit. We were on a site, it was falling behind. So the company we were subcontracted to brought in another painter in who was known for being a bit slapdash.
Mm.
I assumed he would be snagging his own work, but it wasn't the case. It was, right, he gets put on a site, he finishes a house, he buggers off to another site, slapdashes another house. He's like the emergency painter. You get him in to catch up with a programme. And I was like, I'm not snagging that fucking house. It's rough as toast.
Oh, so is that they were going to get him to dash it out,
Yeah.
then get you to snag it behind him to bring it up to...
So my options were snag the house or go out in the wind and sort of drizzle and paint railings. So manifesting. It's like, I remember it being so windy and I was so pissed off and I was so down. And there was landscape gardeners working on a finished part of the site and I was like, they had those like chipboard panels for wheel, no damage in the grass when they're on the wheelbarrow. And I could hear it getting blown about and I was like, Ken, if one of the boards just got blown into my direction and just smacked me, like that would be ideal. Because I was so...
That's where you were at.
I was so down in the dumps. So I started painting these railings and they got the surface technician in to repair the external windowsills. He's put a ladder up on the house he was working in and went away for his lunch while I was painting railings, and the wind blew the ladder with the two supports that, like, so it was like a sledgehammer and it fell and it like cracked me on the arm, broke my arm.
Fucking hell.
Nothing against the site manager then, but he was brilliant. Like he came up and he went through the surface technician and he's like, "You could have fucking killed him. Like, do you have any idea how, if he wasn't wearing a hard hat, if that was 8 inches higher, that's going through his head." He was brilliant. And then when I got taken to hospital, he's like talking to the site manager's talking to my brother on site while I'm in the hospital. Like, phone your brother, tell him to get a claim in, because the house builder here, they'll hold it up. They will put you in bureaucracy for months. Of course, then we enter the time we're not allowed to talk about.
The time where we were stopped from working.
Yeah, so I got held up anyway. But anyway, the site manager was brilliant with me up until then. This
was 2020?
December 2019.
Yeah.
Now, we just had our youngest. She was born in October.
Okay.
So I've got a broken arm and I'm really struggling to bond with my youngest because I couldn't pick her up, couldn't feed her, couldn't do anything for 6 weeks. And this was just before Christmas. And I don't know what happened after that, but the site manager was really frosty after that. And Claire had started a job with an electrician firm working 2 days a week, but it meant I had to go and pick my eldest up for nursery 2 days a week. So I was, instead of getting a lift down to the site with my brother, I was taking my own car down. And one day, because I was leaving early, I went and started a couple of hours early and I was working from my lunch just to make up the time. So I pulled up the site one morning and the site labourers shouted to me, "Can you park your car there?" I was in an allocated space for a house that wasn't reserved or sold. So I didn't want to park in the site car park in my car because I'm 3 cars had had punctures for nails
Yeah.
that week, and I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, imagine I get stranded here and my bairn's stuck in nursery with nobody to pick her up. And just as a joke, I went, it's road tax, I'll park where I want. That fucking weasel went up to the site manager and grassed me up. And the site manager came down and he went through me like a ton of bricks. But I'm quite a passive person and I don't like conflict. So when he keeps like, if my site labourer tells you to fucking move your car, you fucking move your car. And I was like, right, swallow it. I'll just do it. But I didn't want to change my shoes, walk all the way around through the mud to get to my car when the ground workers were going to be opening a fence, a cut through for me in like the next 10 minutes. So I waited, but it wasn't good enough for him. He's came in, I told you to move your fucking car. Are you fucking stupid or something? And I snapped. And this site manager is notorious. He likes submissive people that just roll over and do what you tell him. But because I bit back, he hated my guts. And everything that went wrong on that site after that moment was my fault. If a house was falling behind, it was my fault. He had a nippy sense of catching me on my phone. If I was just like answering a text message or something, he'd walk in, oh aye, standing about on your fucking phone again. Like, I reckon why that guy doesn't get rid of you. You're fucking useless. It's like, fucking hell, man. Like, you're just bullying me. You're just picking on me because you didn't like me. And like, I stormed off the site after he'd shouted at me, phoned her in the car park, I was shaking with rage. I was like, I can't believe somebody spoke to me like that. And I think what I'm going to do, like, I'm going to get kicked off the site now. And I spoke to the guy I was subbied to, and he ended up putting me back on that site. And me and the site manager were just trying to avoid each other, and then eventually we ended up in the same house, in the same room. And he's like, I told you never to come back to this job. What the fuck are you doing here? I was like, I get told to go where I'm going. What do you want me to do? He said, look, he said to the guy we were subbing to, look, as far as I'm concerned, if he doesn't break any more rules, it's water under the bridge with me. But it never was.
No.
He just constantly berated me.
It's one of the things, mate, about the trades, isn't it? Talking about the issues as to why there's such a mental health crisis in construction. I think it can go too far the other way as well, but you would never get away with speaking to somebody like that in an office environment.
No, definitely
Yet
not.
in the trades, it's commonplace. I don't know where I stand. Again, it comes down to that balance, doesn't it? Like, I know it's construction, yeah. So we don't want to be minding our P's and Q's and getting warnings for swearing. I don't think anyone wants that. But at the same time, there's got to be like a level of respect in terms of like, you can't aggressively talk to somebody
That
that way.
site was so hypocritical. I remember we had an apprentice working with us, and they were, at the time, they were going through this like, we are fully inclusive. Sorry, we want people of all races and sexualities and things like that to be open about it. So they're doing a survey, and they were speaking to the apprentice, and like, so son, do you have a wee girlfriend? And he's like, aye, good. We don't want any gentleman on gentleman action here. And I was like, you can't fucking say that.
Yeah.
Like, this is meant to be an inclusivity survey you're doing, and on the other hand, you're saying you can't be gay.
To be honest, so Stuart, it's one of those, isn't it, mate? Like, there's some old-fashioned values kicking around, and mental health, although it's a very hot topic at the moment, there's so much of it is lip service. It's, yeah, we want to talk about it. We want to be part of that because we want the kudos that comes along with saying that we look after people's mental health. But in reality is how many of these big firms are actually doing that. And I'm sure there are some really good ones out there. And there are some companies out there that do some great work, some great charities, the likes of the Lighthouse Club and stuff like that, that do genuinely do good work. But at the same time, there is also a lot of lip service.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, was it last week or the week before it was Mental Health Awareness Week? And I'm very conflicted on that because my view on it is like, I like the fact that it raises mental health awareness. So anything to raise that, that's great. But at the same time, to me, mental health awareness isn't a week. It's 365, it's all year round, every day. So what you get with that, with Mental Health Awareness Week, is you get companies jump on
Yeah.
it. We're going to talk about it this week, but as soon as Friday comes,
Yeah.
oh no, that was last week, lads.
We're on to
We're not doing mental health this week. That was last month. We're doing something else.
it's Dogs with 3 Legs week this week. So.
Exactly. Yeah, animal kindness, whatever it might be. It's putting it in that box where I believe that box should always be open. So I'm conflicted. Like I say, anything that can raise awareness, I support. I think it's great. But when you call it a week or a day,
Yeah.
it's like, no, it should be all the time,
I had
man.
to laugh because I remember them doing a mental health survey as well. It was the way it was worded. It's like the question they were asking was, "Are you happy enough on building sites to do this for the next 5 years?" And I remember they came into the canteen and asked it, and I think everybody went, "I fucking hope not." And they were like, "No, it's a yes or no." I was like, "Well, I need to put food on the table, so it's technically it's a yes, I guess." So they're like, "Yep." And then they're like, "Oh, look, we're so supportive."
Everyone's happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I say, mate, lip service, isn't it? Everyone wants to look good, but do they actually want to do the hard yards to make sure that it is good and inclusive? And the backwards way of thinking about it and keeping things the way that they are is that in reality, if we addressed mental health in the same way as physical health, you'd have people that perform better at work. You'd have people that were optimized in their work output. You'd have a happier, nicer. You'd have more interest in working there. Like the benefits are huge, in just the same way that I would assume if you're working on a building site and somebody had physical health issues that made them unable or unsuitable to do a job or work productivity, their productivity was down, it would be addressed. We don't look at mental health that way, but it's true. If your mental health is low and fucked, you're not going to be churning out your best work at your most sort of like optimal levels, are you?
Yeah, it really affected me as well. It was like I got a stigma attached to me that I was never off my phone on site and I was lazy. I was fucking depressed. I didn't want to be there.
Exactly.
It's like everybody's like the day they saw the red flags for me that I was like struggling and like really badly motivated to go to work in the morning. Like I remember times I was so down, like I could never. I don't think I could ever like take my own life for that. But there was times I was trying to manifest things, like if we were driving down to work one day and like a lorry misses the roundabout and comes into us, nobody would know that I was struggling.
Can I ask you a question, Stuart? You say, because you said that you were like almost manifesting, and when that ladder thing happened to you, and you were talking about if a board blew and hit you, after the ladder had hit you and broke your arm, were you glad that it had happened because you then had that time off?
Uh, no, I actually really struggled with it because like luckily it was just before Christmas, so I got paid my Christmas holiday wage in advance just to try and set me over. But like 6 weeks with no wages, and I couldn't bond with my kid.
Oh, you didn't get paid?
And I just
Was
got
it?
statutory sick pay, like basic.
Right.
So and I couldn't for 6 weeks. I couldn't do anything with my little girl. Like I say thankfully, I know it was a hard time for a lot of people at the time where we couldn't go out to work. But I was off for about 6 months with that, so I got effectively another paternity and a second chance to bond with her.
I'm glad to hear that, mate. It was just of an interest because I've spoken to a few lads, and the more of these conversations I'm having, I guess the more patterns I notice. And I think at times in my life, I was guilty of putting myself in harm's way deliberately. And I look back at some of the behaviour that I used to do, and I kind of see it as almost like self harm now. And I've spoken to other lads that have done similar at dark times or distressed times in their life where they've put themselves in position where they could be harmed. And just what you said about I was almost manifesting if something happened that stopped me coming to work. And it's like a roundabout way of doing it, where if you can dust it off as, well, it was an accident, but it's actually achieved what I'm kind of trying to achieve here. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm trying to loop round at there? It's not direct self-harm or an attempt on your own life, but it's like you're that desperate to break out of the rut that you're in that you're willing to put yourself in harm's way. Because like I say, I've been there myself, and it sounds like from what you were saying there was touching on that kind of thing.
And it's just like on top of like not being able to like lift my little girl or feed her or anything. Like when I went back to work, because money was so tight, we ended up doing a lot of work after work. So it was like long 13, 14 hour days, my own homers at the weekends. I was like, I felt like I was never there.
That's a lot of pressure, mate.
Mm-hmm.
The statistics at the moment, mate, are 10 people in construction, 10 men in construction, sorry, take their own life every week. That's 2 people a day. 2 people a day. And I'm sat here listening to your story and thinking, fuck me, man, that's a lot of pressure you've gone through.
If I remember correctly, the week after I finished up on site, an apprentice joiner on the site, neighbouring the site I was on, took his own life. It's just.
But listening to the stuff that you're saying, it kind of joins the dots and, dots the I's, crosses the T's. Get me sayings right. But it sort of fills in the puzzle as to why. Because the pressure, the environment, you've got the pressure then of thinking, well, I can't just walk off the job. I hate it, but I can't walk off the job because I've got my commitments at home.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, dreading going in the morning, feeling, I think people, not just men, but men in particular, maybe, we feel we need a sense of purpose and we feel we need to achieve something. And when you're going to work and you're feeling undervalued, not valued, resented, picked on, like you said, if you were labelled as being like lazy and always on your phone, and that's what you think you're walking into every day, that must have been horrendous, mate.
Yeah, it really was, because it was, everybody was saying it about me, and it's just you get to the point where if people are saying things about you enough, you're starting like, is it true? I'm a lazy bastard. Like, it was horrible.
But then, to be fair, if you're not motivated and you feel undervalued, you're not going to work your best anyway, are you?
No.
You're not going to go and break your back for somebody that doesn't value you. And I think that's one of the plus points of working in the domestic market is you're very much more in control of your own output equals reward,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, it's chalk and cheese. You
Yeah.
finish a house, or you finish a room for a customer, and even you can be like, God, I could have done a bit better there. But the customer walks in and they go, oh my God, this is amazing. Whereas flip side, like even back to when I was working for my dad, we worked till about 10 o'clock at night. I got home at 11:15. And my dad said, oh, did you get that house done? It's like, aye, we got there. The site manager at 11 o'clock at night phoned my dad and said, I'd rain in the high fives. This house is rough.
11 o'clock at night.
It's like, it was painted in artificial light. The lights weren't on, heating isn't on. It was it was creeping towards winter, or it was just after the winter, and it gets dark fast up there. So the house was basically painted in the dark. I was like, I can't believe that prick has went round the house after we've left. It was about 11:15. Had a look round the house and went, oh, this is rough. We'd done him a favour by working that late.
Yeah, and again, just that phone call because I've had it myself with customers in the past. When you get the late message, the late phone call, I now have 2 phone lines, so I turn it off so I don't see it, because I know how easy it is to ruin a weekend. Based on, you get that late Friday night message, you're not back in work till Monday, and it's just needless, isn't it? And it's people again with that lack of foresight in terms of thinking. People don't think about other people enough.
No.
When they send that message, they think, is this going to fuck his weekend up? Well, they probably think, yeah, it might do, but good. It's that punishment. I can't get my head around the mentality, mate. I really can't. And ultimately, all this stuff is all coming together to create the problem that we've now got, this crisis of mental health that exists in the construction world. Fortunately, as I say, I don't do a lot of site work myself, but from what you ain't sold it to me today, mate.
No.
I'll be honest with you.
It's funny because, like, I told my brother, like, that's fair. I mean, effectively, my brother sacked me. Because he told me for weeks and weeks, like, you need to get a UTR number, we're going self-employed. And, like, I just kind of executive dysfunction, like kind of stalled doing it, and then I got a text message one day, and it was like, the wage you get this week's going to be your last wage, and I was like, all right. So I was like, right, fine, I'm setting out on my own, I'm going private domestics. My brother told the guy we were subcontracted to that I was leaving, and he went and told the site manager that I was leaving, and the site manager was like, just punt him now. He's fucking shite anyway, you'll know miss him. But 2 weeks' time, he'll be begging for his job back. Like the guy was subbing to, he was like, look, don't want to burn any bridges with you. If it doesn't work out, you can come back. Which I appreciated, but there's a million other things I'd rather do than ever go back to site work.
But listen, like moving forward onto a positive note, was that a good thing?
Definitely. Like,
Yeah.
How much? Like I remember you were saying to Rich about with the social media aspect. You're working as many hours as he was as a chef, but I was doing as many hours just physical, like on site till 4:30, and then me and my brother would go and do a homer, be till about 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then I had my own stuff at the weekend. So
by homer, do you mean like foreigner? Is that the same sort of thing, like a private job?
Yeah, like a job on the side, a side hustle.
Right, yeah. So I would refer to that as a foreigner.
Oh, right.
But that's like if you were to work for a company and go and do like a bit of private work on the side of the weekend, I'd call that a foreigner.
Right.
But yeah, so you'd call it a homer.
A homer. Wow.
There we go. Regional dialect differences.
I've heard that called a jobber before as well.
A jobber? Yeah. I've heard that one. Yeah. Okay.
I've never heard a foreigner.
That's foreigner. Again, I guess that would refer to like foreign to the company that you're working for.
So I've been doing foreigners for a while to build up a customer base anyway. So by the time I'd left, I had quite a decent customer base. Had maybe 2 months worth of weekend work booked in to start. So Claire got on the phone.
Well done, Claire, again.
Phoned them all, and it's like Stuart's decided to pursue going for himself now. So see that weekend work, we'll move it into midweek, and that'll be his start.
Yeah.
So that set me like a good couple of weeks, just to find my feet in. Really, it's like I've never been taught how to run a business, like how to price a job properly. So it's always been a steep learning curve.
It's a lot, Stuart, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you go from, you've got the physical skill of doing the trade, but all of a sudden then you are sales, you are accounts, you are, the planner. Like you've got to do everything all in one. But the beauty of it, to try and turn it onto the positive of it, the beauty of it is you get rewarded for the effort. Yeah,
and I probably do work as many hours like with all the social media stuff I do, but I just enjoy the social media stuff where it's a damn sight better than being on a job till 9 o'clock at night.
But social media is no joke.
No,
it is nearly a full-time job in itself. Good point, actually, Stuart. Where can people find you? You talk about your social media. So your TikTok is big, isn't it? In terms of your socials.
That's okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Modest over here. So, yeah, where can we find you then, Stuart? Or where can listeners find you if they don't already?
Handle's the same on all the platforms. It's at S Mclean Decor. I'm most active on TikTok and Instagram. I've got a Facebook page as well, but I just use that for posting like a portfolio of finished work. Yeah. So
you're building your Instagram up though, aren't you? I've been trying.
Yeah,
it's growing. Instagram's probably, as far as I know it, the hardest platform to grow organically.
I've heard people say it's actually TikTok that's the hardest one.
Oh, okay.
But I think it just depends really on what you put out there. But I was so lazy with my Instagram for years, but it's only in the last 6 months or so I've actually been trying to grow it up a bit.
Educate me on that one, mate. How did the TikTok journey begin?
It came off the back of me breaking my arm, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So broke my arm. We fast forward. I'm back at work, but I'm still struggling because it was right at the top of my arm, sort of where it meets the shoulder. So I was getting a bit of restriction, but time where we can't go to work. Couldn't go to a physio. They couldn't do anything. Had a wee Zoom chat with a physio, and they'd suggested maybe something like juggling, something that would get my arm moving.
Physio suggested juggling.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Can you juggle now? Okay.
Funny thing about like TikTok,
Circus
I
act.
actually have a TikTok page for my juggling as well.
Never.
It has
Oh, fucking hell.
that has
I
about
thought it was a joke then as well.
that has about 7,000 followers as well.
Did you juggle before you broke your arm?
Never. So I had to learn.
Fucking hell. Right, okay.
But yeah, so I started juggling. Like my kids love it. Like so,
Yeah.
but like back to like playing football. Like I always liked doing tricks, and I was a bit of a show pony. Even though it was terrible, like step overs and stuff like that. So after I learned how to juggle, like basic stuff, I was like, what else is there? Like so, I joined a couple of Facebook groups about juggling, and they're like, oh, like fuck my god, there's
Why didn't I know this? I'd have had you juggle. I'd have had what can we juggle in here?
aye, so I was like,
Well, go on then. What can you juggle? When you say you don't juggle normal things, what are we talking here?
just tricks, things like that. I can juggle clubs, rings, uh, balls.
Can we add danger into this, Stuart? Have we got like
She
knives?
doesn't let.
And
I've been wanting to try like knives or something, but she's like absolutely not. Like flaming torches. I've been wanting to buy a set of those, but she's like absolutely not.
No sharp, no fire.
No. So I started like learning a few tricks, and
When Claire's not looking, mate,
yeah, 100%. A couple of the guys on the Facebook groups I was on were like, there's quite a community of jugglers on TikTok. Why don't you like get involved with that? So
have you never thought of combining the two, Stuart? I'm
I've
thinking
done it a couple of times.
decorating tools.
Somebody actually tagged me in my juggling account, and was like, "Not being funny, mate, but is this you?" So I was like, I was like, "Yeah, that's me." But I was like, I should have had fun with it. I was like, "Fuck, that guy looks like me, doesn't he?" But aye, so
can you do brushes? Can you do paint brushes?
I've done that before.
Okay. Oh, that's probably pretty
There's a couple
tame.
of videos.
I'm just trying to think on the cuff here as to what decorating implements we can get you
It's
juggling.
hard because the balance of the brushes is always different. So I've tried it anyway, but it doesn't go very far. So I started I joined TikTok and started juggling on it. Like, made some friends and started getting a bit of a following on that. And I was out with my cousin, and he works in social media, so he's like, he's got. I will name drop. He's like worked for Ferrari F1, McLaren F1, Scottish Rugby Union. Like he's been their social media manager, and I was out with him, and he's like, I've seen your juggling TikTok. I was like, fuck me, I was hoping nobody would see this. Like, oh, it's really good. I was like, it's all right. I just wanted to like track my progress. Where it's like, should I do some painting stuff? I was like, nah, definitely not. I've seen a couple of videos of decorators and stuff. It's not for me. It's like, nah, really, you should. That's made for you. You're stupid. Not. It's like I've done it before. I've made a couple of decorating videos. It's just no. It's no dummy about it. And he was like, wasn't it you though? Too well spoken. You come across as false. They're just like, yes, this is how you would paint a wall. This is how I hold the brush. It's like how you would do a phone interview. Like, be authentic. Like, just go out there. Like, swear. Use your accent. Like, tell people how you would do something. And I was like, fine. Set up Mclean Decor TikTok. Put a couple of videos out. And when we were on holiday in France, I got a text message for a guy. He said his dad was a painter. Sadly, he'd passed away. But the things I was saying resonated with him. That stuff his dad would say. And he's like painting something I've not been blessed with. So how about when you come back for holiday, you decorate my house? And I was like, well, I'm going to get work from this. I'm going to pursue it. And I got lucky with a couple of videos, grew a following, and it kind of took off from there.
Fair play, mate. Fair play. I mean, yeah, it's. I would say in my business, it's probably 90% of my new custom now is coming through social media. I think it's a huge marketing tool now.
Absolutely.
I haven't actually my business, so the podcast. Go follow it. Actually, the podcast is on TikTok, but my decorating business isn't. I've got that. That's Instagram and Facebook, but that's plenty for that, to be honest. But yeah, I'm a little bit new to the whole TikTok thing. Still finding my feet, seeing what works with that. It blows my mind, to be honest, because some videos you put, it's always the thing, isn't it? You do a video and you think that's mint, that'll do really well, and it falls flat as anything. And then you put one out, but I'm in a rush. I just need to get some content out, and it'll be like
Definitely
100,000.
the best video I've ever, like the best performing video I've got on my TikTok wasn't even my idea.
Mm.
I was doing a job for a friend. I was painting their study, and like they live in a new build, and they were like, that bit in my ceilings annoyed me for years. Any chance you could just like touch up? I was like, the paint edges is it's going to be nowhere near it. You're always going to see it. So no, we've got the paint in the garage for it. They brought it out, and it was this horrible yellow separated mess. And I was like, oh, what the fuck have I done? but she had said, oh, you should film yourself mixing that. That'd be good content. And I was like, aye, whatever. I like, filmed it with the cyclone mixer.
Yeah.
And I was like, right, fucking a couple of stupid hashtags. Didn't even research any hashtags for it or anything. I just like, fucking post. And then had 900,000 views overnight or something. I was like,
It's mad.
I need to get this lassie in. This is my social media manager.
I mean, to be honest with you, like reference Kev, Paint Warrior, like no disrespect to him with what he did, but when he posted, I think his first video was him cutting around a light switch.
Mm-hmm.
And fair play to him for doing it. But like I've cut round probably 100,000 light switches and plugs in my life and never considered filming it.
No.
But then he's done it, filmed it, and it's blown up. And I think that was the start of his TikTok journey, which has then led to all the other platforms. And obviously, Kev is much more than painting around a light socket. But yeah, it's that thing, isn't it? I think a lot of us that are in the building trades just take for granted a lot of the basic stuff. Whereas the new generation that are coming through on social media, they haven't got a clue how these things work. And because, again, skill shortage, trades not being attractive, a lot of what we do in the building trades now is like magic to some people. So it does have that draw and that value. So yeah, fair play for landing that one, mate.
I got lucky.
No, well, you gambled on it and you put yourself out there. I mean, while we're on the subject of social media, in fairness, it's a good segue into. Just recently, you have put a few videos out talking about your own mental health and how you've been feeling and all that kind of thing. First of all, I want to say big credit for doing that, mate, because it takes a degree of openness and vulnerability to actually put yourself out there on the platform and be honest and open, because all too often social media gets used as a highlight reel and the shiny polished. Mm-hmm. So to put stuff out there and actually say, do you know what, guys, I'm struggling at the moment because of this, massive credit to you. It echoes what I'm doing here and having people come and talk so people realise they're not alone, and it goes a long way to doing that. But what inspired you to do that?
I think it was, I started to get really overwhelmed by it. It's like, I remember what Reese for Solly Hall was saying about how his business, he feels like he's created a monster. Like, I was like, that's how I feel. Especially we went to the Scottish Painting and Decorating show. I had no idea how many people see my stuff. So obviously Kev's there and he's a rock star in our industry, but we were penned in a corner for like 15 minutes. Like somebody came up to me and like, oh, Stuart, I love your content. Can I get a picture of you? And I'm like, why the fuck do you want a picture of me? I'm just a painter and decorator. I'm you.
Yeah.
And then they walk away, and then somebody else is like, oh, can I get a picture? And I'm like, we were stuck in this corner of the painting and decorating show for 15 minutes. And I was like, I'm not okay with this. So like, she noticed, and she's like, right, come on, we're going to the bar. You need out of this situation. You just need a couple of minutes to catch your breath. But I was like,
so you weren't expecting that?
No, definitely not. Like, like a couple of people from Aberdeen actually came up, like we were talking to Kev actually at the time, and like they almost bypassed him to get to me, and I was like, fuck, like you can't know who that guy is. Like what the fuck do you want a photo with me for? I'm just a fucking idiot, really.
Do you know what, mate? You're not genuinely. It's one of the like I've got a lot of grievances with social media. But one of the beautiful things is it gives people the opportunity to vote with their feet. Like you can watch whoever you want and whatever you want. And when you hear about like numbers like that, like 900,000, you know, I mean, guys like Kev, their videos regularly reach millions. Like, do you know what? The viewing figures for some prime time TV shows don't get near that anymore.
That's true.
Because a lot of youngsters, particularly, will sit and watch YouTube and stuff like that, and people don't really tune into terrestrial telly anymore.
No.
So you might have prime time shows that are doing less than 1 million, and you've put a clip out that's reached. I mean, can you imagine visualizing 900,000 people?
I get plateaued at 2.6 million.
Well, okay, all right, you've raised the bar now, Stuart. But you imagine visualizing 2.6 million people that have seen you on a video, and now to a weird degree, they kind of feel like they know you a little bit, but they've seen your face. So then when you turn up at these shows, because although a lot of people use social media, it's still quite a big thing. Not many people like putting their face on it. Not many people go front a camera. A lot of people just post pictures, and all credit to people for using it the way they want to. But there aren't actually that many front-facing people. So I guess particularly Scottish as well. I mean, you're actually the only Scottish social media decorator that I can think of top of my head.
There's a couple, but a few people have said like it's like your accounts are just like have higher numbers than anybody else. Like I've never had it confirmed. Like I wouldn't have the ego to actually go and do that.
You heard this first. Scotland's most famous decorator in the room with me today.
It has a weighty expectation on it as well. Like when we were at the show, I was saying this to Claire last night. People are almost expecting me to be the Scottish version of Kev. Like they're coming up to me, when are you bringing out your range of brushes? When are you doing this? I'm like, I'm not. I've got no plans to do that.
I was just trying to think in the top of it. So I've now had the most famous Scottish decorator in the studio. I've had the most famous English decorator in the studio. I'm trying to find a Welsh one now. I've got to find Welsh, Irish decorators out there. Hit me up.
So all the home nations.
But it's a bizarre. It's a great thing, but a strange thing, isn't it? That anybody now can just put themselves out there and reap the rewards of that. So I love the fact, and as I said this to you before, I think the work that the likes of you, Kev, anyone on social media in any construction industry, unfortunately become the target for a lot of shit as well. But generally speaking, it's raising the profile of the industry, and more people doing that, the better.
It's funny because like me and Claire were having drinks with Kev and Tasha after the show had ended, and I was like, I said to Kev, I was like, mate, how do you do it? Like, how do you deal with people coming up to you wanting photos? Because like that's fucking scrambled my brain. Like,
yeah,
he's like, look, we all just deal with things differently. Like, I think you deal with trolls better. It's like I'm just Scottish and naturally sarcastic, so.
I mean, actually, I've never done this before, but to speak to somebody off camera, Claire in the corner, how was that for you, going to a show with Stuart as his partner and having people come up to, like, your husband and ask for pictures? Was that weird for you?
Yes, surreal, probably.
Surreal.
But I knew he had a lot of attention because I suddenly became, oh, you're that painter's wife when I was out.
Oh, you're not.
Even at the school, the mums had known me for 5-6 years.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, all they wanted to do is talk to me about him.
Really?
And I sort of just became his wife. So I already knew that the attention was there, but I don't think he knew it.
Was aware.
As much as I did, but it still was very odd, an odd experience.
Just in case the mics, just in case the mics aren't picking up Claire's comments because of the software, but she was just saying that it was surreal and that all of a sudden now at the school and places, Claire has become the painter's wife. So, yeah. But yeah, it is bizarre though, mate, isn't it? I haven't really experienced it myself, but having, I guess, people know you that you don't know them, it must be a bit of an odd thing.
Yeah.
But
because it makes you second guess yourself because they come up to you and they're like, Stuart, and I'm like,
do I know you?
Do I know you? Yes.
Yeah.
And you try to be polite, like, oh yeah, mate, how's it going? Still trying to trace you.
Well, that's it. Actually, I had a few people at the last decorator show in November, just as just off my decorating show, come up and talk to me, and then introduce themselves. And I'm like, oh yeah, we speak on Instagram, but there's no pictures of you, so I have no idea what you look like. So yeah, it does pay. It does pay to, a little tip for anyone listening, even if it's just a still photo, get some pictures of your face for your business, for your customers.
I tell anybody that asks me advice about social media, like, get yourself in front of the camera.
100%.
Like, everybody's like, oh, like brand deals and that. Like that's a bonus that comes by itself, but just for your business, putting yourself in front of the camera gives a potential customer a chance to meet you.
Yep.
And a lot of the time when I go to price a job now, I'm the only person that's pricing it because they've saw my social media, they saw me, they're like, I quite like him.
Yeah, we like him as a person.
We're a good fit.
People by people.
Yeah.
People by people. And a little psychology 101 here. The other thing we're putting yourself front and centre is there are a demographic of customer that will have an anxiety over people they haven't met. So just by having pictures of yourself so customers know what to expect, they know who's coming to the door, it just reduces that level of anxiety and kind of introduces you before you've even met them. So it's definitely a good business move, even if you don't want to, you don't have to do videos and juggle paintbrushes, but just still pictures. It can be a workshop, whatever it might be. But it's a good tip. Get some pictures of yourself on your social profiles for sure.
I will try and juggle paintbrushes and post it.
I'm expecting this next week, Stuart. Actually, save it until we release this episode, mate. And on that day, you will see Stuart juggling flaming paintbrushes. I'm getting pointed at now. Well, actually, I couldn't suggest that you set any particular brand of paintbrush on fire. But yeah, I mean, the social media journey, mate, it's one that you're only getting started on. I think that's only going to get bigger and bigger. So all credit to you. Keep it up, man.
Thank you.
Because like I say, it raises the profile of the platform in general. So you're doing a service to that. Is there anything that we haven't talked about, Stuart, that you wanted to cover?
I don't know. Is there?
Sarah, have we missed anything? I feel like we've come through on a roughly chronological.
It's almost breaking the fourth wall there.
I think we've gone through a roughly chronological order of things, haven't we?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, mate, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure talking. I mean, before we do wrap things up, we'll go back to this again and just reiterate where people can find you on your socials.
Yes, at Mclean Decor, basically on all socials.
Spell that one out for me, mate. Just spell that one out for the listeners. So just no breaks, no dots, no dashes. Just
SMCLEANDECOR.
So just read McLean, but we'll go with McLean.
I think I spelled that right.
Yeah. Okay. So S Mclean Decor on socials. Search him up. You'll find him. You probably already follow him on TikTok as it is anyway. But yeah. So obviously, I'll put all your details in the episode description, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure having you in to talk today. Again, huge thanks for the massive effort that you've made in coming and being here today, and also for opening up on some subjects which I know were clearly painful subjects for you. But that's the reason we're all doing this, mate. It's the reason all the guests have come in, is because there's people out there that will have no doubt been through similar things. I mean, on the subject of bereavement, none of us get through this life without going through that. We're all going to lose people, and people are going to eventually lose us. A bit morbid, isn't it? But it's the one undeniable truth of life is that death is a part of it. So, on that subject, is one that's going to resonate with a lot of people. Are you okay if anyone reaches out to you?
Yeah, I'm really happy for anybody to reach out to me. It's a privilege to be here and take part. And
mate, honestly, it's you by coming here today, and it might sound a bit grand this, but you're sort of becoming part of the movement of other people that have sat in the seat before you and added their voice to the message of raising mental health awareness in construction, which is exactly what we're doing. It's not just construction, it's raising mental health awareness in general. And hopefully there's people out there that aren't in construction that are listening to this. But, if you're not in construction, you probably know somebody that is. And all the people that are out there, encourage friends, family and partners to listen as well, because it's important that sometimes we can't, when you're in a dark spot yourself, you can't see the light, and you need people around you to recognise that you're in a dark place. One of the key messages that I keep trying to spread is it's equally as important to listen as it is to talk, because if there's no one there to listen, people won't talk.
Absolutely.
And on that note,
well, I hope you enjoy the gifts I brought you.
Actually, yeah. I put them on the table and forgot about them. Stuart kindly has brought me some genuine Scotch whiskey from Scotland. What, mate? I ain't even get it.
It's pronounced Bunnahabhain.
Bunnahabhain.
Yeah, it was my dad's favourite whiskey.
Oh, mate, that's beautiful. Some Bunnahabhain whiskey. Give that a try later. And what have we got here? Some Edinburgh Black Dry Stout. Dry Stout.
That's from a brewery in my hometown. It's effectively their version of Guinness, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Don't mind a Guinness. So, yeah, fantastic, mate. Very much appreciated. Come all that way and come bearing gifts.
I've got you a sticker as well for when you start your sticker wall for the rest,
Mate,
of us Instagrammers.
I've got stickers now, mate. I've got stickers. We're going to sort that out momentarily. So everyone listening, thank you very much for tuning in. I will catch you soon on the next one.